I'm your host, Kurt Sandvig, and welcome to Paranormal Almanac. That's right, I'm your host, Kurt Sandvig, and on this week's edition of Paranormal Almanac, I'm going to be talking to author Craig Owens. Now, he wrote a book that I just happened to come across while out for a walk at work. I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard, there in the window, plain as day, was a book called Haunted by History, Separating the Facts and Legends of 8 Historic Hotels and Inns in Southern California, Volume 1. It's a long title, it's a long book, and I mean that in the best of ways. This is a monstrous book. The details that he goes into, the background, the research, the debunking that Craig goes into made this an instant classic, instant favorite of mine. So I reached out to him, and luckily enough for me, Craig happened to live nearby and was gracious enough to come by, hang out, and chat about his book. And I got to tell you, I'm not getting paid for this. I say it in the interview as well. I'm not getting paid for it. This is just a great book that I want you all to know about. It is that good. It is so well done. The hotels he talks about are the Hotel del Coronado, the Victorian Rose Bed and Breakfast, the Julian Gold Rush Hotel, the Mission Inn Hotel and Spa, the Alexandria Hotel, the Wyndham Garden Ventura Pierpoint Inn, the Banning House Lodge, and the Glen Tavern Inn. Now, whether or not you live in Southern California, whether or not you live in the United States, this book is fantastic. It debunks some of the biggest legends, I guess I could say, about these hotels. But it also proves some, and it leaves a lot of unanswered questions as well. It's a very well-rounded book with some beautiful photography. And I mean, just about every page, I'm flipping through it right now, just about every page is just gorgeous photo after gorgeous photo. They recreate some stuff. They show some historical photos. It is just beautifully done. I cannot talk enough about how beautiful this book is. And if you guys like the interview, how much you should all go out and get a copy of this book. We talk about that towards the end of the interview. But before we get to that, as always, let's do some shout-outs. Shout-outs to Melissa, Laura, Kyle, Lauren, Amber, Angie, Autumn, Carolyn, Chuck, Carolyn C., Chuck, Dan, Daniel, Dill, Edgar, Heidi, J. Mark, Jory, Joshua, Jade, Jeff, Jim, Judy, Juliana, Kat, Keith, Kira, Lash, Laura Ruth O., Lauren McCune, Lily, M. Calvillo, Maggie, hi Maggie, Michaela, Manning, Martin, Matt, Megan, Nanashi, Nick, Pablo, Rosa, Sarah B., Sarah L., Shelley, Lauren, Todd, Jamie, and Elijah Hendrickson, Travis, Troy, Veronica, and finally, Vincente. These kids are the cool kids. They're the patrons. You can head on over to patreon.com/paranormalalmanac if you want to know more. If you need another reason to join, well, how about this? The edition that everybody gets to listen to, the public edition, the one you're probably listening to right now of this very episode of Paranormal Almanac, is only half of what they get to hear. That's right, there is a 2-hour patron-exclusive edition of this very episode, and it's only for the patrons. So if you want to hear it, you're going to have to join up. Now, I'm not going to do any paranormal news because I want to get right into this one, but I do have to thank a couple of people. I'm going to thank them actually on the next episode, but I want to tell you about a couple of people who wrote me some awesome paranormal news songs, intros. I'm going to say intros. I got 2 of them so far. I love them both. In fact, next episode, hint, spoiler, whatever you want to call it, the Yowie episode, I'm going to play them both. One before paranormal news, and one as a, playing out of paranormal news. I can't wait for you guys to hear them. They are fantastic. I can't thank you guys enough for sending me in stuff. That is just freaking awesome. But You're going to have to wait till next episode to hear that. That episode will be up later this week. As of now, let's get into the interview already in progress with Craig Owens. Once again, his book is called Haunted by History, Separating the Facts and Legends of 8 Historic Hotels and Inns in Southern California, Volume 1. I cannot wait for Volume 2. I'm honestly excited for Volume 2. Alrighty, let's jump into this one. Alrighty, so obviously the first question, what made you interested in writing about the haunted hotels in Southern California?
Well, I always loved old Hollywood history. And I was very fascinated and interested in the Ambassador Hotel, but I had no idea where it was when I arrived in L.A.
Yeah.
So whenever I would do my little PA runs, and they'd send me down the Sunset Strip, I'd be looking real carefully. Where's the Ambassador Hotel? Because I did know it was still standing.
Sure.
I just didn't know where it was.
Yeah.
So I would get information about who was staying there, some of the anecdotes, but I never could find this place. Then finally, I had made friends with a guy that we grew up in the same small town together. So we were having dinner one night, and I finally just broke down and said, I found the Brown Derby. I found all these cool places, the Chateau Marmont. I found all of these old Hollywood haunts, but I can't find the Ambassador Hotel. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he said, it's right across the street. We were eating at the HMS Bounty at the Gaylord.
Holy crap. You couldn't have been any closer.
I said, no, well, I ran out the front door, and lo and behold, it's there behind a big, tall fence.
Sure, yeah.
Dark and foreboding. Passed it many, many times. Never knew that was the Ambassador Hotel.
Yep.
So after we had dinner, I went back to my apartment, which was on the 5th floor of this early 1930s building.
Uh-huh.
I had a view of the Ambassador Hotel from my window on the 5th floor.
I'm sorry to jump ahead. Did you ever get to go in it?
I did, finally.
What was it like to finally get to go in there? Was it everything you hoped and dreamed, or?
What happened was I worked on a made-for-TV movie. Well, they actually used some of the newer mid-century modern bungalows for a location.
Yeah.
And finally, I get a call at night. They said, can you come to the set? And I was there, and I got to walk through that lobby by myself.
That's awesome.
And it was amazing. And to me, the building felt alive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got to be in there once, and I thought the same thing.
It felt alive. And you could feel the energy, and I swear you can almost hear the music coming out of the Coconut Grove, just in your inner ear.
Yep.
The first thing they asked me when I approached, them, their first question was, is this place haunted? And I had heard that it was.
Yeah, so did I.
And I was interested in ghosts all my life. And I always kind of wanted to know what the stories were, but I was, the policy of the people that were maintaining the property was not to talk about the ghosts. So you couldn't even get security to talk about it either. And so it was just a rumor. I did have a friend that worked production that had a production office at the Ambassador, and he said, oh no, that place at night gets really creepy, and lights would turn on and off, and weird things like that, where they'd leave the lights off and next morning they'd be on, and vice versa, and so that's really the only story I heard. And
Did you get to go in the ballroom?
Yes, a little bit. That was my first time there. And then years later, I'd even moved even closer, but I got noticed that, I think it was like the Heidi Deckler dance. I probably mispronounced her name, but there was this kind of avant-garde dance troupe that goes into historic places right before they're torn down. And they do these big, elaborate 2-hour dance performances. I bought 2 tickets. Took my wife at the time who didn't know anything about L.A. I began to notice that a lot of the dances that they had choreographed were actually choreographed after the ghost stories.
Oh, no kidding.
And some of the things that they had, like a woman in white, a white dress.
Yep.
standing in one of the hallways, and that was one of the ghost stories that I later heard about.
Yeah.
And it was a real disturbing performance. My wife hated it.
I would have loved it.
And when we were in the Coconut Grove, we both got splitting headaches.
Really?
Watching the performance there and whatnot. But they actually were performing even inside the empty Olympic-style swimming pool.
Holy crap.
They had like a drummer and a singer dressed in the 30s, belting a song from the bottom of this empty pool. It was very,
I loved it.
It was very surreal.
Yeah.
And we would move to different parts of the hotel, and different parts of the hotel would feature a dance. And the Coconut Grove was like two drunks fighting. It was like that was the theme.
Yeah.
And so it was real boozy, and I loved it. And you could say that in a way that kind of was beginning, the seeds for my book were being planted. The visuals that they were doing, because they actually had people dressed in costumes in the window display of those old shops.
Nice.
I did appreciate them incorporating the ghost stories. And some of the stuff had to have been inspired by just what they were experiencing when choreographing and practicing in the Ambassador Hotel.
Oh, that's cool.
Because I really felt that years later when I did my project and I started shooting in haunted hotels, weird things started happening. And so I got the idea, well, maybe it's my photography, maybe it's the themes that I'm picking. But one of the things that I was doing subconsciously and consciously was I was capturing and adapting my photos based on the atmosphere of these places too.
Interesting. And I gotta say, I love the photos in the book. I like the fact that you recreated the ghost, like basically what you were just talking about. But you did it in such a way that it was entertaining. Some made me laugh, and it was just beautifully done. And I like the fact that you decided to add that into the book and not just take a couple of photos of a blank wall or this hallway or something. It adds something to it.
I want people to see these hotels through a new pair of eyes. Anyone could go in there and see.
Yeah, I can take a snapshot of a hotel room and say it was haunted and this is my story. Okay, but now 50 pages in, now 100 pages in, and it's hotel room after hotel room. It's the
you want to bring it. You want to bring the history to life.
I agree,
and that's a lot of these old properties were beginning to go under.
Yeah,
and so when I got the idea originally to start shooting in old hotels in 2009. The Pierpont Inn foreclosed on, the Aztec Hotel in Monrovia foreclosed on, and I decided these buildings need to be appreciated.
Well, that's the other piece that I liked about this book is that I love old Hollywood. Yes. I absolutely love, when I first moved out here, I wanted to go to the old places. I wanted to see the old stars. I wanted to do everything that the old stars went to and stay at the Ambassador and stay at the Queen Mary and go to Musso and Frank's and go to the Formosa and do all this stuff. And that's what, there was the two things, twofold. Obviously the haunted part. I love that stuff. That's why I do the podcast. But then the Hollywood history. So it was a neat thing to find out that you consider yourself a Hollywood historian. And from what you're saying, I 100% believe that you are a Hollywood historian. You know what you're talking about. So you appreciate him on a couple of different levels. And it's really well done and noticeable. I was telling you before we started recording, I wanted to save it on here. I was really skeptical about your book because you said debunking on there, and nobody likes debunking, or nobody wants to do the debunking. They want to keep the websites that have this the dumbest, fakest ghost stories get the most clicks. No one wants to do the research and go, well, that's not true. That building wasn't even there in 1920. How could that happen?
Right.
So the debunking part, I was like, oh, please actually do some debunking, which you do. And I've already told the listeners, my fans, that they need to buy this book for no matter where you live in the world.
Right.
This book shows you ghosts, debunking, Hollywood stuff. You taught me more stuff about old Hollywood that I was like, well, I know this hotel. I won't learn much. Oh my God, I learned a ton. How long did it take you to do the research for this?
Okay, well, when I decided to do a book, at first it just started out for another project, and I was taking pictures, old Hollywood style photos in some of these buildings, and paranormal activity started breaking out. Like I had never seen a ghost before in my life, and I thought I would never see one.
Well, tell me about that.
I was somewhat skeptical. Well, in 2009,
You call yourself what do you call yourself? A reluctant
skeptic.
A reluctant skeptic. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that.
I always kind of wavered back and forth, between believing and not believing.
Sure.
There was enough things that happened in my life to keep that faith.
Sure.
However, there was so much stuff that I didn't quite believe in. Just because I may believe in ghosts doesn't mean I believe in everything about them that's being said.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I wasn't sure about everything, and I would read the skeptical arguments. I would read the non-believing arguments, and they sounded really good, And it's like, gosh, I wish I could embrace that, but I just can't quite embrace it at the same time. And I'm going, well, the truth has to be somewhere in the middle. And it wasn't debunking. That was not in my mind at the time. It was just taking kind of glamour old Hollywood shots that allowed me to use my film degree and my love for old Hollywood. And I picked the Mission Inn in Riverside because I thought it had the best bones architecturally. You could do almost anything with this. Yeah. With this. You could go gothic, you could go horror, it had everything. So I picked this place, and this was the summer of 2009. And if you've ever been in Riverside in August, compound that with the recession, and we practically had the whole, the model that I took with me, we had the whole building practically to ourselves.
We had the run of the place.
We actually went a couple of days where we didn't really see another guest, except maybe at mealtime in the courtyard. And I'm not sure they were staying there. I think they were just coming in for a meal, And so I wanted to rent. The room that I saw was the Carrie Jacobs Bond suite. They call it presidential suites, but that's pretentious. There were no presidents that stayed in that.
Yeah.
And I liked it because it had the Gothic archways and the columns and whatnot. And there was nothing online that said that particular suite was haunted. And so I didn't think anything of it. I did hear that it was haunted. So I thought, well, I'll bring a couple of audio recorders just in case.
Sure.
And a camera, a video camera as well as my still camera. But I wasn't there to look for ghosts. I was there to do fancy shots. Well, that first night we shot, nothing really happened. But then the next morning, weird things started erupting in my suite. And it was around noontime. I had just, I'd woken up early. The model was in the room directly below mine. And I had run some errands and let her sleep in because we had been shooting till like 4 a.m. And I entered the suite, and immediately I started hearing what sounded like someone moving things around in the bathroom. Huh. And so I thought it was housekeeping, so I called out, hello, no answer back. So I walked back into the bathroom, and no one was there. Nothing looked disturbed. It was just this weird noise that just really sounded like someone was moving things around, Because it was already 110 degrees outside, I thought, man, that heat's really got to me. I'm tired, So I totally rationalized it as not being haunted, you know. So I went to my computer, and I'm killing time answering emails, and I'm typing in. And the Carrie Jacobs Bond suite is actually on 2 levels. There's a loft and then the main floor, and there's these weird, funky little steps that go up. You can only fit maybe 2 to 3 people up there comfortably, but it looks down onto the bed. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a funky thing. And the only thing up there is a table, a chair, maybe 2 chairs. Yeah, a table, 2 chairs, and a floor lamp. And that's pretty much all there is up there.
Sure.
So I have to preface that because while I'm on the computer, I start hearing noises up in that loft. And it sounded like someone was dropping one by one, maybe a heavy metal coin on a wood table.
Weird.
Just boom. And so it was like bang, bang. But it wasn't the sound of spinning coins. It just sounded like something metal just dropping, And I still was trying to shrug it off and focus on just doing my emails. But then when I heard the click-clack clicking of women's heels, sounding like it was walking across the loft, which was tiled, and going to the stairs to come down, and I remember distinctly that I wrote, I think I've got a ghost. I got to go check into it more later. Send. And so I went up there, first I checked the whole area, and I wasn't going to turn off the air conditioning, but I did make sure all the windows and doors were closed.
Sure.
And I did look around, and no one was around. So
Is there a hallway behind that loft or anything?
No, there is an elevator adjacent to that suite, but you can hear the elevator, and occasionally you can hear the voices of people in the elevator, but you can tell exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So what I did is I went up there with a recorder, and I felt like a complete idiot for the next 10 minutes. I mean, I was listening intently for anything. I wanted to make sure that if I catch anything weird, it's going to be not out of negligence or sloppiness.
Yeah.
So I had about as complete control of the environment as I knew how to do it. So for 10 minutes, I felt like a complete idiot talking to air, asking questions of something I'm not sure is there or even exists. And lo and behold, when I played the audio back, it sounded like a very faint female voice.
No kidding.
And I immediately lost interest in the photo shoot for the most part. And the model, she came back in, about 1:30. Where's my lunch? Where's my brunch?
Yeah.
And I said, no, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. So I played it to her, and she goes, yeah, I hear it. Can we go eat? And I said, sure. And said, oh, by the way, were you moving furniture at 5 a.m? I was just on the verge of sleep, and there was this heavy dragging sound from up above where you were. And I said, well, what kind of sound was it? Exactly. What direction? And she gave me the direction and said it was about 5 to 8 feet. And she thought I was, moving furniture to set up for the next day.
Yeah, prepping a shoot. Yeah.
I assured her, no, I was like asleep, clothed on the bed. I mean, I was out as soon as she walked out of the room. So I thought that was interesting, but I thought my voice was more interesting at the time. So I went to the front desk later that day, and I let the front desk person hear it. And then she heard it, and then I said, oh, and by the way, guess what happened to the model who was staying directly below me? And when I told the front desk person that story, she lit up. Her eyes got real bright, and she said, no, whoa, wait a second. She said, now, I have to ask you this. Did you move furniture at 5 a.m? I said, of course not. I was asleep. She said, well, that's really interesting, and I'm glad you told me that, because since I've been working here, you are like the third person
really
to report this from that exact 2 rooms. And she said, when I was on the graveyard shift, I'd get the call about 5 a.m, on a couple of occasions, and it's someone complaining about furniture being moved in that top suite. And I was afraid to call. So she wouldn't come out and say it's haunted, but she said, well, I just always figured it was something else, and I got it. I got exactly what she was saying.
Now, could you make out any of the words on the recording?
Not at the time. When I got back home, I was able to listen to the audio, and it was a voice that, very faint, mind you, very faint. Hard to understand, but it sounded something to the effect, I literally say, can you come closer so we can talk? And this voice immediately pipes in saying, sure, I would love that.
Wow.
And then she said something else unintelligible, and then she says, I want to go home.
Aw.
I know. And that creeped me out. I want to go home. Because it was like, I want to go home. I was stunned by it. But that planted the seeds of what was really the history of this room. And later, when I actually did my research, I found that it was a ladies' parlor, a card room. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
That when it opened in the late 20s, when it was finished and opened, it was a card room and socializing room for women. So it's not surprising that I would catch a woman's voice.
Exactly.
In that room.
It verifies.
It matches the history.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time. Now, I'm going a real long way to answering your question, but let's go right to that.
Sure.
Nothing really happened the next day, but I needed to move to another suite for the final night. And so I had heard about this haunted room where there's a spiral staircase and people get pushed down it. And what they had done is they were offering me and Alice's suite. And so I went there thinking that was the room.
Yeah.
So just when the leasing person, the hotel person, this is an embarrassing story, and it's not in the book, but when she let me in there, she had to take a call, so she left.
Yeah.
So while I was there on that stairs, I was antagonizing whatever was there as much as possible. Just antagonizing, because I knew I only had like 2-3 minutes. So I was like, really, come on, show yourself, show yourself.
Yeah.
Because I was time pressed.
Yeah.
And of course nothing happened. And I decided I didn't want that suite because it was too odd looking and it was a mixture of modern and so I decided to take the Alhambra Mirador suite, which was the big suite that used to be where the presidents and movie stars stayed, from, the 1915, 19-teens, 1920s to more recent times.
Sure.
And it's the one with the balcony that overlooks, and all the wedding pictures are done right around there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I took this suite because it was big and palatial and epic. I hated that space. There was something very heavy about that room. And
so it wasn't the physical room. It was just something about it.
I could not stand being in there. And I kept saying, what is wrong with you? This is like the most popular, most expensive suite. And why do I feel like I can't stand it? There's something very wrong with this room, And I remember telling the model, I said, I just feel like the other shoe's about to drop anytime. And I don't know why I'm saying that's my turn of phrase that's in my head, but the other shoe's going to drop anytime. She thought, well, maybe you need to eat. There was one weird thing that happened almost immediately, but I didn't witness it.
What was that?
I was setting up my computer in the bedroom area right next to the den, and I was plugging it into I was under the table trying to plug it into the Wi-Fi, whatever.
Yeah.
The box that you need to do to access the internet. And the model was standing just right next to me. And so no one was in that big room, the main room. And what ended up happening, there was a loud crash in that room. And, as I kind of pull myself out from under the table, I said, what was that? And the model was just looking with kind of this, she had this kind of blank look, like shock. And what she said, now, I didn't witness this, but this is what she told me.
Uh-huh.
She said that she had a glass of water and her bottle of water, and she set them right next to each other on a table. And when she looked over after hearing that crash, she saw that the bottled water was still, but the water in the glass was splashy.
Really?
And had been disturbed. So it was almost like the glass tipped and then tipped back by itself. And that would have been enough to have made that kind of crash. So I just said, oh, that's interesting. I said, well, we'll have to keep an eye. That's always my catchphrase. Keep an eye on it, see what happens as the night goes. Then around midnight, my phone rings. And so I step out of the suite and I'm walking across the courtyard to take the call. And it's my wife. So I get off the phone and I'm walking across the courtyard to enter the suite to go back for round 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
And something catches my eye in this like brick open mouth tunnel that leads into the interior of the hotel. And something caught my eye. So I stopped and I looked. I was literally looking for something out of Ghostbusters, some kind of blue,
exactly,
smoke, stereotypical, half transparent or a green glob, anything that, I had seen in a Hollywood film as a ghost, and I just wasn't seeing it. It was well lit. It had like 3 lights. It was casting, shadows on the bricks because it looks almost like a 4th floor dungeon, open mouth hallway, and it was kind of round. And I'm staring and I'm taking inventory. I go, okay, lights, nothing wrong with the lights, shadow in the brick. I can see through the glass door on the far end of the hallway that leads into the hotel, and I can see the stained glass window in that once you're inside, and then there's a shadow. And so I went back and I went, okay, let's do it again. So I going through the same motion again. And this time when I land on the shadow, I thought, your brain is thinking really fast. Mine was at that point. So
Sure.
I'm like, da-da-da-da-da-da. And one of the thoughts was, it looks a little human-like. It looks like almost like some kind of blotchy thing leaning over around the corner, staring. If I didn't know better, that's what I would think that was.
Yeah.
So I was just thinking, after staring at it directly, what's the light source that's causing that shadow? Because it's making this really weird, almost human-like thing. And when I literally thought that, was asking, that shadow disappeared behind a corner.
No kidding.
and it moved human-like, but super fast.
Wow.
And another thought that was coming in is, another question was, why is that shadow darker than the other shadows? It was really a black mask.
Yeah.
And it wasn't reversed. It wasn't like ghost, and then it turns out to be, a ghost.
Exactly.
It was literally, my brain said shadow, and that's how I interpreted it. Until it moved around a corner. And of course, I was a deer in headlights.
I was going to ask, what happened? What'd you do? Yeah.
For about 1 second, I was like, are you kidding me? And I went, and then the little voice inside me go, dummy, go check, So I went around the corner where the shadow had disappeared, and there were only 2 doors where this little alcove dead ends. One was to a room that I later found was the haunted room with the spiral staircase.
Uh-huh.
And the other room was the room where I was going to be sleeping later that night. So
yeah, good luck with the sleeping.
So I literally walked back into the suite looking like I had seen a ghost, because I had. And I will tell you this with absolute 100% true. I did not believe in shadow people at all at the time. I believed in ghosts reluctantly, but I absolutely did not believe in shadow people.
Yeah.
I'd seen it on Ghost Hunters and just thought, that's made up.
Yep.
How do you find shadows in the dark? I mean, it's kind of stupid. That was my rationale at the time.
Sure.
Let's turn off all the lights and look for shadows.
Yep. I'm with you on that statement, though.
And so whenever they said shadow people, it's like, well, how come I never heard of shadow people until these paranormal shows came out?
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's another reason why I didn't believe in shadow people, is because I didn't believe in them until I saw one. And now I had to reevaluate, and I go, okay, I can't vouch for the shadow people that they show on TV.
But you can see what you saw. You can say what you saw.
It wasn't pitch black.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't in total darkness seeing a shadow.
Yeah.
But I was actually it was in a lit hallway.
I like that you investigated it. You didn't just either pass by and forget it, or say that was a trick of the mind, or you didn't freak out and run the other way. I mean, you investigated. That's great.
So that was my first ghost. And I never would have seen it had I not been at the Mission Inn, probably stirring it up by having this girl, dressed as ghost-like, really. She was wearing 1930s, 1920s clothing. And one of the anecdotes was that on our second night shooting, nothing happened to us personally there, but I had her in front of that big mission. And there's a picture in my book.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
She's wearing this red dress and this black hair, and she's posed at the door. And we're shooting this at 2 a.m, right? Or roughly around there. And I'm in the shadows.
Sure.
So no one can see me. So she's just really still. Suddenly, I hear a rustling noise, and the security guard runs around the corner, and he sees me in the shadow. I see him, and we both jump out of our skin, because and he took a deep breath, started laughing. He was kind of a young guy in his 20s. And he said, you scared the crap out of me. And he said, I thought I had seen a ghost, and I was about to radio it in. So he goes, okay, that's great. Well, I'm glad it's not a ghost. And I said, have you ever seen a ghost here? I said, no, I'm pretty new to the job. And I said, well, how long have you been here? About 2 months. And I said, have the other guys seen ghosts? And he said, well, some of them say they have. And they were telling me that one of these days, if I stay here long enough, I'm going to see one. And that was kind of how it went. Good night. Have a good,
Yeah. I love it. And it seems like in your book that the staffs of the hotels, you had some pretty good conversations with them, and they all seem to be very forward about, like, yes, we saw a ghost, or yes, this is haunted, or I heard this, or I've seen this.
Yes.
Were you surprised that they were so forward with that, or did you expect that?
To some degree, I expected it. And sometimes I'll ask them, is there any other room that, you guys know about that the internet doesn't know about?
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll say yes, sometimes no. The Mission Inn, at first they offered the catacombs to us, but then they got kind of worried about something.
Sure.
And so they decided not to let us into the catacombs. But it was their idea. And I wasn't asking for anything that I wasn't willing to pay for.
Did any hotels say, no, you can't do this?
Yes.
No
there were
kidding.
a few hotels that didn't want to talk about their ghosts. In Avalon, the house, I forgot the exact name of it, but it's the Wrigley. It was the Wrigley home that's been turned into a bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
It's funny. I had written them because I wanted to do a shoot there. And it's a manager that's no longer there anymore. But she basically wrote saying, well, we don't like to talk about the hauntings. And then she said something odd. She said, we already have a problem with people getting scared because something happens in their room and they leave in the middle of the night. And I went,
nice.
I was just like, okay. In the first sentence, you're kind of wanting to deny that it's haunted. And then the second sentence, you're basically telling me what the story is. And confirming that it is. And so we just don't want, more people getting frightened than already. And I thought, that's an interesting way to put it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, believe it or not, the Hollywood Roosevelt.
It's going to be one of my questions. How come they're not? I expected the Roosevelt and the Queen Mary to be in the first edition.
Queen Mary, well, what I did with the hotels is I actually did 16 hotels total over the course of many years. With the Roosevelt, when it almost was torn down for a parking lot.
Yep.
And at the very last second, a buyer came through and they bought it and restored it, and they spent, millions of dollars doing so.
Yeah.
In the 80s, during the renovation of the building, that's when the ghost stories started popping up.
Yep.
About the Marilyn Monroe mirror.
The Montgomery Cliffs.
Right.
Suite, and
Yeah, there's specific, I got the name of the specific person that saw the Marilyn Monroe ghost.
Yeah.
Or supposedly.
Yeah.
In the mirror. And all of these ghost stories popped up all at once. And they really used it to promote. And they used it to good effect.
Sure.
Because people still recycled those same old stories from the 80s.
Yep.
As if it's new.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And, however, the building has changed ownership since then, and they didn't want to talk about the ghosts anymore. So they removed Marilyn's mirror from its location, and no one knows where it is. I guess someone probably does, but no one likes to cop to it.
I think it's gone. I really do.
It could be.
I've tried numerous times with and some high level people, and nobody can tell me where it is.
Yeah.
Now, were you surprised by how far off some of the legends were, or how they had grown? Do you have any example? Because you did a ton of research, so you found you found the legends, you did the research, then what?
Well, one of the things that I decided to do when I decided that I was going to commit to a book, I decided I was going to make the best darn book I knew how to make.
Sure.
And I collected a bunch of ghost books myself, and they always left me wanting.
Oh, yeah.
They always were, you're always going, they don't give the exact dates. They get kind of wishy-washy. Almost every book has, they checked in, but they never checked out.
Of course.
And I got so sick and tired of reading that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, please. And I didn't like phrases like, some people say, or old-timers will tell you.
Yep.
And I thought, this is just masking for something else.
Oh, yeah. It's called not doing the research or regurgitating the same old story
Yeah.
again and again. Yeah.
And a lot of times it is regurgitated stories, but they'll change something around. And so what is correct and what isn't, And so I decided that I wanted to do a book that actually gets it as close to right as I knew how.
Sure.
And in order to do that, it wasn't just researching ghost legends. It was researching the historians, too, and the historical records.
Sure.
And that's what shocked me the most, is finding out that things weren't as we think about the history.
Yeah.
And that a lot of the history stuff was still speculative and not fully documented. And so when I set out to do this, I wanted to, I'd already done my photo shoot there. So I got a feel for the hotel, being there all hours of the day and night in these haunted rooms for, like long 17, 18 hour days.
Sure.
So I knew the smells. I knew the sounds. I knew the vibe of these places. So I decided that when I would do the research is I wanted to look for forgotten stories. The stories that maybe the marketing teams and other authors didn't think were important.
Yeah.
In telling in their books, but maybe might be important to someone else.
Sure.
So it took a lot of research and falling down rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And I started putting it in a timeline of events because I wanted to see what was the cause and the effect for everything,
sure,
including the economic cause and effect. Because all of these buildings, if you've been around a while, you had your highs and you had your lows.
Oh, yeah.
And the lows got really low at times. And I wanted to know the deaths, not just the same, like with the Hotel del Coronado. Everyone talks about Kate Morgan.
Yeah.
And whole books have been written about her. But what about the other? She can't be the only one that ever died.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to know what else happened. What if it isn't Kate Morgan? So I doubted everything, and I approached it that way. They say it's built in 1888. Fine. I want to see the document that says that it was built in 1888.
Yeah.
It was easy to find because that is well documented.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see if I could check it against the original records as well. So I started doing that, and that's when I started finding out that the stories are off, and the history is off, and that there are some really funny stories, forgotten stories, or just bizarre deaths that just got glossed over.
Sure.
So now with the ghost legends, I wanted to find out when they entered the public knowledge. When did the media pick up on it?
Yeah.
Which was, can we actually trace it to the original person that started it, if possible? And what year? And that is really the secret to understanding the hauntings.
Sure.
Is you have to know when the ghost stories started.
Yeah.
And how they broke. And this is where 99% of all ghost hunters miss it.
Sure.
They don't, and when you miss it and you don't have that information, you go way off the mark. You really have to know.
Oh, yeah.
And,
well, one of them, and forgive me, I can't think of the hotel off the top of my head. You pinpointed it to the specific person.
Yeah.
That was just a freaking money grab.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, it's down to the spot and the time and exactly be like, no,
the date.
None of that is right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the Glen Tavern Inn was,
there you go. Yeah.
That was one where it was a money grab.
Yeah.
And the stuff that people still maintain today.
Exactly.
Like the third floor being a bordello and the gambler that was shot in a crooked poker game, and
even the president being there. Wasn't there? There's one where they're like, oh, in the president's name. No.
Houdini.
Oh, it's Houdini. Yes, yeah. That's it. That's exactly it.
They were saying Houdini stayed there and he never stayed there.
I love that.
Never was even in Santa Paula.
He had to stay and protect his props all night long.
Yeah.
Come on.
That is so dumb. I can't believe that they got away with it because, and the author that, put this out and reinforced it, I list him in the book, but I won't do it for publicly. He always, in his book, he'd say, well, I never looked into this, but some people say, and that's what they say.
Oh, jeez.
And It's like, no, you can look this up. Houdini is very well documented.
Exactly.
He was a huge star that traveled with an entourage.
Exactly.
He didn't travel by himself and go, oh, no, not my secrets.
Got to protect my props all night long.
Yeah, I mean, this guy Houdini wasn't like a traveling snake oil salesman.
Yeah.
You know, I pull up my wagon and don't you ever go behind the curtain.
So
you
good.
know? He traveled with at least, 10, 15 people. He was like Beyonce. Can you imagine Beyonce coming in and just her by herself and going, my train broke down and no, I don't want anyone to hear my record. So I'm going to just stay in my room and I'm just going to have my music and I don't want it stolen.
Now, how frustrating is it for you? You proved that it's wrong, that it's not true. Yes. None of that's true. And yet, I looked it up. There's still websites since after or around the same time as your book that are saying these stories are true, that Houdini stayed here and you can go see his ghost. I mean, how frustrating for you is it that after you prove something wrong, there's still
time. It takes time and podcasts.
Yes. Oh.
And and book sales and presentations to do it because you're undoing, these stories came out in the 80s, so it's 40 years of repeating this story.
Sure.
It's not just and my book isn't 40 years old.
No.
So it takes a while for the antidote to get into the system before it starts taking effect. Right now, what I find funny is I don't cover the Cecil. Everyone talks about the Cecil Hotel.
Sure.
Cecil wouldn't let me in.
No, I tried to get in there as well.
Yeah, they would. Yeah.
No.
Well, the thing is that I go on like the E Network. I go on all of these, even some of the LA Times and some of the real people that should have it right.
Yeah.
They all are saying that the hotel opened in 1927 and that the first suicide there was in 1931 and that the Black Dahlia, this is new, but the Black Dahlia was last seen there, okay?
Yeah. Well, she was last seen everywhere in Hollywood if you start researching her.
Yeah, well, yes. And if you had a bizarre death, you can bet the Black Dahlia visited that building back in the 40s.
Exactly, yeah.
But the thing is that it's real easy to research. And if you did the research, you would see that the Cecil Hotel, it's like shameful that these news organizations don't research.
I agree.
But it's obvious and easy to find that the Cecil Hotel did not open in 1927. It opened on Christmas Eve, 1924. The first suicide, I can see where people do that's on the Wikipedia page.
Sure.
All the fake information, all the false information's on Wikipedia. But the first suicide I found was actually in 1927. And all the researchers missed this.
Wow.
But I found it, and so I footnote everything. So that I want it to be posterity's sake, and almost no paranormal people footnote anything.
I agree.
So I wanted to footnote it because if I'm wrong, or if I connect the dots wrong, at least you can see where I'm coming from.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
where I'm
how you got that
my
info.
Information
Yeah.
And can improve it. And that's another thing that separates me from, I think, everyone else is that if I'm wrong, I'm the type of guy that'll go, hey, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
I have met other authors that won't do that. They'll be like, curse you.
No, yeah. they stick to their guns and go, oh, no, I'm not wrong. That's the truth.
Yeah, I've been at this place more than you have. I've written 30 books. You've written one.
Yep.
One guy actually told me that. And I was saying, well, it's better to be right in one book than wrong in 30.
Exactly.
And, but again, I'm not out to crucify or ruin anyone's career. That was never my goal. In fact, I try to be very respectful about it.
I think you're respectful for the hotels, the legends, the people that died there. I mean, you didn't make it a frivolous one-liner. I mean, you told the story.
Yeah. But I always felt that there needs to be my approach to the whole book and my approach to the paranormal in general is that we have collected via television, newspapers, books, about 50 to 60, 70 years worth of ghost stories. And especially places like the Queen Mary. I mean, it's just one on top of another
Exactly.
of another. And I think it's time to actually do a bit of a revisionism where we actually revisit everything. And we determine, does this fit the history of the building?
Sure.
If it doesn't, it needs to go. If history was twisted to support the ghost legend, then we need to untwist it and let the story
And
go.
get it right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The history should be a litmus test to test the validity of a ghost story. It shouldn't be used and fictionalized to back up a ghost legend. And that's the two different sides that you see on how history's used.
Oh, sure.
You can either use it as okay, we're going to test this story. Was there a brothel on the third floor of the Glen Tavern?
Yeah.
And you see example after example where, a minister, when the Glen Tavern actually applies for a liquor license after Prohibition, the local churches tried to deny the Glen Tavern a liquor license.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were saying, we've done such a good job of keeping that hotel clean, I'm paraphrasing.
Sure.
But it's never had a liquor problems. They're selling little problems. So why open that can of worms now? Okay. That kind of is a good indication that there was nothing there.
Exactly.
That.
Nor was it the same one where they had the supposed speakeasy, but the speakeasy would have been seen clearly from across the street?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was my next point.
Yeah.
Is that, I looked up when that third floor was actually built out. It was attic space when it was built out. And I say this and I always get a laugh in presentations. It's like, if you have a speakeasy, you've got to have an escape route.
Exactly.
And there were no fire escape or anything for people to escape from. They'd be trapped like rats.
And they tend to hide those a little bit.
Better.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just a touch.
And the Glen Tavern was built across the street from a church. I mean, the old church building's gone and it replaced by a newer church building. But
Sure.
there was always a church there.
Yeah.
From the get-go. And if you're going to have two windows burning lights in the middle of the night, and plus the fact, if you've ever stayed at the Glen Tavern Inn, and you hear people walking on that third floor.
Sure.
When you're on the second floor.
Sure.
It's an old building. It
Yeah.
creaks.
Yeah.
And that would be the worst kept secret ever. You could not have any gambling or any kind of organized vice up there and try to keep it a secret from the second floor.
Yeah, and it's just a dumb spot to do it. Yeah.
So, you go back to the author that started this and you read his books and he says, well, some people say old timers will tell you, Okay, what old timers now? So when did this story begin? If you believe this author, it was always in existence.
Exactly.
This story. So, let's find it. It should be in the news. It should be there should be a record of it if it really goes back that long. Now, the beheaded, woman, prostitute or whatever. Oh my God. I don't know. Now, I don't know when that started, except that it wasn't around in the 1980s.
Sure.
And again, in a town the size of Santa Paula, if there's a beheading, there's going to be a record of it.
Oh, God, yeah.
In a small town like that, you're not going to keep that a secret.
Oh, yeah.
So it was funny to actually see a certain paranormal show recreate it graphically to the point where they have to say no one under 17 should be watching this program.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, guys, seriously.
There's been a number of episodes that I've done where I'll look up a story and they'll say, and the Los Angeles Times covered this in 1945.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, cool. So I pay the money, I go through the archives, and I find the story that has been so bastardized now to make it, the Giants were real and they killed a bunch of people in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I read the article straight to my listeners, and then I get people messaging me, oh, that's not true. My grandpa lived there back in the time. And I'm like, I read you from this. These guys are fake. They're wrong. I read you the actual news story.
Yeah.
It's not something that I'm making up at the moment. It was then.
Yeah.
Some people just can't handle the facts, or it's just not as fun. It's not as neat to, I want to, but I still want to believe. Okay.
Well, we all, including myself, we all believed in things that turned out to not be true.
Exactly. And there's so much stuff out there. People always say, like, how long can you keep this paranormal show going? I've got hundreds, if not thousands of stories that I can either prove existed or debunk them.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you know, I don't try to, I just put out the facts. Take it. This is it. Use your, I put the critical thinking skills in, and it's up to you to whether or not you want to accept it or reject it.
You connect the dots. You say, here's this, it happened here. Here's this, it happened here.
Yeah.
Here's this, it never happened. Here's this, happened there.
Yeah.
You never go, well, that person, maybe you did, but like you're never negative. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
You just tell the story.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked, is I liked the fact that you told the story.
Yeah, no, it was very important not to be negative. Now, I may have, in researching, I may blow up, because it's like anytime certain people, authors, say anything or publish anything, I'm going, oh, God, you've just added 3 months to my workload, because I have to run down every one of your claims now.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And not just your first edition, but your fifth edition, and see how it compares with your first edition. It's like, please, just stop the madness,
The internet has definitely not helped the whole legends stuff. I mean, it's just expounding them daily, and it's to the point where I'm like, I don't know. There's some stories that I haven't had a chance to, episodes I haven't had a chance to do yet, because the stories are so convoluted that I can't tell fact from fiction at all.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think I'm finally making headway on is the Knickerbocker Hotel in Hollywood.
Nice. I was going to ask
Now, it's not in the book, but it's on my website, bizarrela.com.
Which I got to stop you for a second and say, I love Bizarre LA. BizarreLA.com.
The Knickerbocker Hotel is finally catching on. Then you started seeing these ghost hunting bus tours, themed on where all the haunts of Rudolph Valentino.
Sure.
So they take you to, Hollywood Forever Cemetery where the mausoleum is. They take you to the Alexandria Hotel downtown. You're supposed to haunt there. They take you to Paramount.
Yep.
And then they take you to the Knickerbocker Hotel. And they repeat these stories.
Sure.
And then you got these people opining, well, he died so suddenly, he's just going through his daily routines. He's checking in at the office. He's going to his hotel room. He's going to Falcon Lair. That when it stood, that was supposed to be haunted, right?
Oh yeah.
So he'd go home, then he'd go to dance the tango at the Knickerbocker. Okay,
Yep.
So I hated this because I researched the Knickerbocker, and the Knickerbocker was a building that was started in the mid-20s. In 1926, the year that Valentino died, it went bankrupt.
No
and
kidding.
never opened. The investors sued each other. And so it was a vacant building until 1929 when some people bought it and converted it and opened it as the Hollywood Knickerbocker. So his last year of being alive, Valentino was either at Falcon Lair, because there were a lot of repairs that needed to do.
Sure.
There. He was dating Paula Negri, and he was in New York City an awful lot.
No kidding. I didn't know that one.
Yeah. So he really wasn't in Hollywood that much at that time.
I'm trying to see, while you're telling this, I'm trying to see if I perpetuated this rumor, because I did a story about Benedict Canyon and all the hauntings in Benedict Canyon, including Rudolph Valentino, but I don't think I have the Knickerbockers. I think I'm okay.
If you're doing Falcon Lair is what was there.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was talking about, was Falcon Lair. What else did I have? I have Irene Gibbons, checked in the Knickerbocker in 1962, committed suicide.
She did.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is...
and the non-haunting, the whole Harry Houdini seance and all that fun stuff. And
yeah.
Let me ask you this. What was your... scariest is the wrong term. What was the most paranormal hotel when you were doing all the research that you can talk about, whether it be on this book, or if you don't want to talk about the next one, I totally understand. But
no, I've already started teasing the next one, even though I don't have an official release date for it.
I can't wait.
But it also covers the Aztec Hotel, the Palomar Inn Hotel in Temecula. I'm kind of going out of order. The Grand Colonial Hotel in La Jolla, the Zane Grey Pueblo in Avalon, the Culver Hotel
Oh, wow.
in Culver City.
Wow.
Now that one's got a lot of legends that need
Yeah,
to
it
be
does.
corrected.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not surprised by that statement at all. That's a hard one to figure out fact from fiction, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
I got it all figured out.
Nice.
So
I don't have to do it. I love it.
You don't have to do it, I promise. And the Queen Mary being the later one.
Nice.
Answer your question. The most actively haunted hotel in Volume 1, Glen Tavern Inn.
No kidding.
Easily. Although there are parts of the Pierpont Inn that I think is just as active. And, but I will be talking about that a little bit later. In fact, I'm trying to do something there.
No kidding. Oh, I would, please keep me posted on that.
Yeah. No, they liked the book. They were down on the paranormal for years based on past events that happened there.
Yeah.
But they read my book and they liked it so much that they actually are entertaining the idea of opening their doors to me.
Oh, that'd be cool.
To hold a paranormal event there, which I hope happens because I think I probably would be the best person to handle it at this point.
I would love that. I would love to go. Please keep me in mind.
Until someone else comes along and builds on it,
Sure.
But I did a lot of dispelling of myths and putting it in the proper place and was just and being respectful about it as well. Volume 2, Palomar Inn Hotel.
No kidding.
It's like not on anybody's radar map.
I was going to say, I never would have guessed that.
That's the one place where I caught a ghost photo. And that
really?
That convinced me that that ghosts do exist. And I wasn't trying. I was just doing my regular standard middle of the afternoon.
Really?
Yeah. I'm going to pull it up here.
I would love to see it. Yeah.
To show you, it's too good to be true. And that's why I haven't published it publicly, on social media, because being the debunker and this reluctant skeptic that I am,
I love it.
I hate eating my own words about me thinking I don't believe in ghost photos, most of the orbs, and and I'm constantly shooting down. And I was doing that like 2 days before I took the photo. Someone had asked me, "Do you ever use your photo shoots to actually try to shoot ghosts?" And I said, it's a waste of time. Once in a lifetime thing, even if I can do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I'm renting the buildings. I've got costume rentals. I'm not going to go into a dark room and just take random photos of a dark room and then blow it up and look for stuff.
Exactly. Look for dust. Yeah.
Yeah. I just said it's got to come find me.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, that's exactly what happened in the same location where I went on my little tirade about that.
No kidding.
And I felt like I'd been punked.
Yeah.
Completely punked.
Oh, really? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so I was embarrassed. And people go, "Well, why should you be embarrassed?" It's like, are you kidding me? I put that out there. People are going to be calling me a loon and everything else. It's so much easier to go through life and say, "I don't believe."
It's true.
People don't look at you like you're crazy. But if you go, "I believe," and then on top of that, to add insult to injury is that not only do I capture a picture of a ghost that actually looks like a person, but it's in the process of apporting something. And you know what apporting means?
Yeah.
It was active making something disappear.
Yeah.
That was tangible and in the real world.
I can't wait to see this photo.
You can't err on the side of being too skeptical. You can't err on the side of being too cynical.
Sure.
And non-believers make the same mistake that many believers do.
I agree with that.
You believe what you want to believe. You see what you want to see.
Yeah.
You hear what you want to hear. And it's all based on your worldview.
Oh, yeah. I know I don't know enough, so I keep my mind open. I don't have any definitive answers. Why would I?
Same here.
Yeah.
And people say, "Well, no, you're a paranormal expert. You're a paranormal expert." And I cringe at that. It's like, well, technically there are no such thing, no such person
exactly
as a paranormal expert. But I will say this, I'm an expert on the history of certain locations, and that's as close as you're going to get to being a paranormal expert.
And that that loops perfectly back to the thing that I liked about this was that I want to use science to explain or knowledge to explain. And I think that's where we're going to get the explanations. I truly do. I think that you're going to learn a lot more by having a little bit of knowledge under you.
Science, science is absolutely critical. What I was doing with the photos was what is called Syracuse. It's also called the Singapore theory, or the theory of familiarization.
Okay. Now you got me. I was lost at the beginning, but now I'm caught back up.
Right.
Sure.
It has many different names, but what I was doing was taking some of these legends and restaging it in the area.
Yes.
Where it was doing. And then we'd mic it and we'd monitor. And so things would happen sometimes during the shoot to offset the shoot. And sometimes it would happen immediately afterwards. And sometimes it happened hours afterwards. But we were stirring the pot. Because we were trying to create something that if there's a ghost there, and if ghosts exist, and if this ghost possesses intelligence,
yes,
then my theory is we should be able to psychologically play games with it like we accused them of doing with us.
Exactly. Or at least connecting something that they can relate to. Because people walking around with a cell phone in their hand, they don't know what a cell phone is. Yeah. They shouldn't know what a cell phone is. But you're connecting to them on a level that they should be able to connect with.
Right. You're I have many different ways of looking at it. In some ways, I set us up to be the hunted. Let them hunt us.
Sure.
By being in that space doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
We do it respectfully.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, though. The emotional responses seem to be the key for a lot of this stuff. That the connections seem to be the emotional... the more emotion you can put into it.
You can confuse it into thinking that they're interacting with something that's in their own time and their own field of knowledge and experience, they will come forward.
Yes, I agree with that.
And that happened to me at the Alexandria Hotel. A door slammed shut that should never have slammed shut right in the middle of our shoot.
Wow.
In the evening at the Glen Tavern Inn, my final night there. My shoot was literally disrupted by disembodied voices just chatting very softly.
No kidding.
I was lucky enough to catch it on the recorder. But what we ultimately determined was that it sounded the most like it came from behind the door of a room that was unoccupied.
Oh, wow.
On the third floor. And we had complete control over the environment.
Sure.
So it made, we couldn't figure it out. And interestingly enough, I was able to hear some of the voices later, what was said.
Really?
It was like 2 men and a female. And at one point they say, "Leave us," which I don't know if is directed at me or could have been. That's another thing. Don't ever assume
I was going to say, you can read into it any way you want. Yeah.
But the other thing that I thought was interesting is that there are two words, Glen Tavern. And this makes sense to me because... And it'll make sense if you know the history. And here's the history. When that building opened in 1911, up until World War II, that's all it was called.
Yes.
Glen Tavern.
Yeah.
Then it was converted to dorms for females for a few years during the war years.
Yeah.
Then when they reverted it back to a hotel, they called it the Glen Tavern Hotel.
Yeah.
And it stayed the Glen Tavern Hotel until the 80s when it got another major renovation.
Yep.
Then it became the Glen Tavern Inn.
Sure.
So when you catch a voice that says just Glen Tavern, it makes you think, okay, we have almost a date stamp.
I was going to say, it gives you a time, yeah.
Yeah, it gives you a time frame of where this possibly could have been.
That's interesting. That's cool.
And that's what I love about EVPs and actually believe that it's not errant radio signals. It's not errant. There are things that sometimes you catch.
Oh, yeah.
That fit perfectly. It's old language, old style.
Yeah.
Usage, turn of phrases.
Sure.
The Aztec Hotel in Monrovia, which is going to be featured in Volume 2. I am the only historian there because you can't find anything online.
Really?
I went and spent almost a year looking through microfiche in the library, and I photocopied every mention of the Aztec Hotel I came across in the local paper.
Man.
So, one of the legends that has been said for years is that basement was a speakeasy and that illegal card games. And I have not been able to disprove that.
Really?
Or prove it.
But still, not disproving it is saying something.
Yeah. But one of the things that I did do during an EVP session in there is we caught an excellent EVP of a man saying one set of deuces.
Nice!
And I didn't know what it took me a while to hear it a couple of times before I could decipher it. And since I never played poker, I was going, it sounds like one set of deuces. What's one set of deuces? So I looked it up and realized it was a poker hand. And I went, what are the odds of catching an EVP of a voice of a poker hand in a space that was, according to legend, was a place where card games took place?
Boy, that connects. That's awesome. Okay, so that kind of leads us perfectly into this. So where can people find you? What do you want to plug? This is your chance, your time to shine.
Okay, well, you can buy the book on BazaarLA.com. I sign and mail those myself.
Excellent.
And that's my preferred way of doing it. I have an Etsy store, which is etsy.com/store/hauntedbyhistory. I every now and then I'll put on some not factory fresh copies. They're not used, but they just got kind of dinged up a little bit in shipping. So you can buy a book usually half price there.
Oh, cool.
Off it'll be like $25 to $30 depending on the condition of it. You can buy it at various bookstores where you bought it, which was Larry Edmonds.
Yeah.
It's available at the Glen Tavern Inn. They've sold a lot of books.
Nice.
There.
That's cool.
It's at Book Soup. It's at the Bearded Ladies Mystic Museum here in Burbank.
Excellent.
Yeah. They've sold a lot of copies as well. I need to get them to take all their satanic stuff off of the top of my books.
Good luck with that.
It doesn't sell as well when you've got Beelzebub standing on your cover, But if you absolutely have to order it, and you can order it through your bookstore. It's easily available. So if you're living in Idaho or near any Barnes and Nobles,
is it on Amazon?
It's on Amazon as well.
There you go. All right,
you can do
so
it
anywhere, yeah.
Yeah, so that's good. It won what happened was it got the publisher's weekly star review, which is the highest review a book can get. And that opened doors. Suddenly a distributor wanted me to sign a contract, so I signed a contract, and
nice.
A lot of different things have happened. And so that helped me get the book out to a broader audience than just me by myself.
Sure.
But you're not going to get signed copies on Amazon.
No, yeah.
And you can do that. And I also have a special edition hardback, which is $100.
Oh, I didn't know
I only
that.
had like 300 printed.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
And so that's only available on my website. I don't even really take it out of the house because I love them too much. I'm kind of hoarding them. But you can get one from me. But they won't ever go on sale because they're collector's items from the get-go,
Now, are you on social media?
I'm on social media, on Instagram. I'm on, Bizarre_Los_Angeles. In fact, a lot of people just call me Bizarre. Hey, Bizarre Los Angeles. I'm as Bizarre Los Angeles on Facebook. I'm everywhere. I mean, I think I'm Bizarre LA on Twitter.
Okay.
But that's the one I still haven't kind of figured out what my voice is on that one.
I'm the same. Yeah.
But my website is BazaarLA.com, and I'm trying to get new stuff on there all the time. But I also do a lot of events, and I've got an event on March 8th and 9th at the little known about haunted historic Harris House in Glendale, California.
Oh, very cool.
It's a 1902 mansion, and I pass by it all the time. And finally I met the owner, and we hit it off as friends, and he showed me a ghost photo that a film production crew had actually taken last year.
No kidding.
And I thought, it's very interesting, and I'd like to get more people involved and show this photo and actually do a ghost hunt there.
That's cool.
So people that haven't bought the book that want to do the ghost hunt, it's $75 for 3 hours on 2 nights, but you get the book as part of it. So it's almost like you get the book for $50 and then the ghost hunt for $25.
Exactly. I was going to say, that's a good way, yeah.
But if you've already bought the book and you don't want another book, then it's $50. But the price goes, a good chunk of it goes actually to the maintaining and preserving of this mansion.
Oh, that's neat. That's cool. I did not know that. That's awesome.
And it's never been really ghost hunted before. No paranormal investigations. And so this is a trial balloon and see what we can do. See what we can find, because there's enough stories about it to make me think there might be something going on. And I've already started the in-depth research.
Excellent.
And I already found there's a person that died, and it bugs me.
Really?
It's like the little man inside of me, to paraphrase Double Indemnity. There's something that stands out that, okay, this doesn't make sense. I need to look into it a little deeper.
Oh, that's cool. I'm very intrigued on that one, too.
But I think I may have a suspect. I always look for suspects for the ghosts, something that fits the history.
Sure.
That fits the description and the nature, the psychological profile of the ghostly activity. If you can find a match.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Then it makes a lot more sense.
That's cool. That's really cool.
It's like that lady in white at the Banning House Lodge.
Yeah.
People are seeing this ghostly woman on the edge of town.
Yeah.
And then coming across a death that happened in that area, and it just happens to be in the area of where the woman is buried.
Yeah. See, those are those connections. That's the thing that I like, is when you find those connections.
Yeah.
That it doesn't prove that that's her, but boy, it sure points in that direction.
It points strongly in that direction, because very few people were actually visiting that part of the island.
Exactly.
So they wouldn't have a lot of deaths, nor reason or personality or emotional connection.
Yeah.
But even just the nature of how she died. I mean, she died from a heroin overdose or opium, wasn't it?
Was it opium? Yes, it was opium. Yes.
Opium. I mean, needle marks up and down her. And this is early 1900s.
Yeah.
And then the husband who just leaves her.
There's so many messed up stories like that in this book where I'm like, really? This is how they did it back then?
Yeah.
Yeah, just wire some money from me from my beau or this. Come on. Yeah.
I think the Alexandria Hotel, there's a bar there called the Wolves. I was there last Sunday, and it was like a real long line all the way to the end of the block, and some people weren't allowed to get in because we were at capacity.
I heard about this, yeah.
And so we're going to try to do it again. And I'm still working on trying to get the Alexandria Hotel to actually let people in, to give them a tour and show them these ballrooms and some of these
locations what I would
where
love.
I'm talking about.
That's what I would really
It'll probably have to be a small fee because I have to pay for the employee.
Sure.
For the former hotel to let us in.
Sure.
But I really, they don't like to talk about their ghosts.
Yeah.
But I think they're trusting in me enough to let me do it. So,
well, again, it's done with respect, and that's the big thing. That's what's, in my opinion, that's what's doing this so well, is that you show it the respect it deserves.
Yeah. And so there's that, and then there's some other surprises in the works. I can't really speak about those.
No, I can't wait.
But if one works out the way it is, you're going to be begging to be on part of that one.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
Well,
definitely a very strong old Hollywood connection.
Oh, I love it.
So that's how I'll tease it.
Well, I can't thank you enough for being on the show. Sure. Honestly, I was so ecstatic when you answered my email, because like I said, I fell in love immediately with this book. It's so well done. Honestly, no joke. I'm not getting paid to say this. Everybody should go out and get a copy. It is fantastic. If you like history, it's great. If you like paranormal, it's great. I mean, it's got a little bit of everything for everybody. The photos are beautiful. So it's really well done. Thank you again.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. Thank you again to Craig Owens for coming by, letting me interview him, telling me some great stories before, during, and after this podcast. Once again, if you want to hear the full episode, you have to head on over to patreon.com/paranormalalmanac and sign up. For as little as $1 a month, you get extra episodes and more. What more? Well, go on over there and check it out. What do you guys think? Would you stay in any of these haunted hotels? Because I can tell you one, I'm definitely going to stay in at least one of these hotels. I am all about haunted hotels. I've already stayed in one. I've stayed in the Roosevelt in the haunted room. So I would love to stay in a couple of these that I didn't even know about. These were surprises to me. When I saw what hotels he chose in this book, I was like, well, I don't know anything about that hotel, or I know very little about that hotel. I am excited to learn more. And boy, did I. Like I said, he does some deep, deep dives. The research that he does is phenomenal. That's the research I wish I had the time to do for every episode. Once again, I am your host, Kurt Sandvig, and this has been another edition of Paranormal Almanac. No, we love. I know the lackner that's neat nets the left worker which it was in the shell in this half and the derpus. Here's the how this no.